Even though the Roman Empire was one of the world's greatest civilizations, that did not stop it from falling apart. What's more, albeit Roman culture figured out how to live on inside the Byzantine realm, this powerful realm would likewise happen to disintegrate ultimately. Therefore, what is preventing our societies from suffering the same fate? According to scientists, not much, although it is possible that the same threat that was believed to have decimated the Byzantines may still exist today. But wait, before we begin, make sure to click that subscribe button and become a member of our awesome community. Let's get started. Researchers guarantee for this reason the Byzantine realm fell, and people today ought to be terrified. Before the worst happens, perhaps we should learn from history. Take, for instance, the fall of Rome, which was partly the result of Rome's own success. The empire had grown too big to be easy to run, so it was eventually divided into two parts. The western part had its capital in Italy, and the eastern part, also known as the Byzantine Empire, covered parts of Africa, the Balkans, and Asia today. Importantly, Emperor Diocletian was responsible for the division, ruling the east while appointing Maximilian to lead the west, which resulted in a new rivalry. As the Western Roman Empire ended up being doomed, that was a smart move. It was devastated by attacks from tribes like the Visigoths until its last emperor was overthrown in 476 AD. This makes the Byzantine Empire's accomplishments even more impressive because it survived the fall of its rivals and continued into the modern era. In fact, no other state west of China could accomplish this, and the empire's wealth and relative political cohesion allowed it to survive and grow. In case you were curious, the Byzantine Empire got its name from the Greek city Byzantium, which was named after its founder Business. This state was based on the edge of the Bosphorus waterway and gave an ideal passage among Europe and Asia. When the city became the capital of his new Rome, Emperor Constantine would rename it Constantinople. Even though Latin was Rome's official language, Greek was spoken widely there. Today we recognize it as a symbol of life in the Byzantine Empire. However, in a curious twist, citizens continued to identify as both Roman and Christian. The Byzantines regarded themselves as Rome's successors, given that Constantine made Christianity the official religion of Rome. In point of fact, the Byzantine people were also ruled by an all-powerful emperor who oversaw both the government and the church, despite their Greek cultural influences. Then at that point, there was a compelling Senate compass primarily of effective military figures. The best way to get into power was to be a wealthy landowner or the emperor's favorite, especially since there were no elections, and Christianity influenced many aspects of Byzantine culture. The East. The Byzantine Empire flourished, expanding into what was once Western Rome. Byzantine spread throughout the Mediterranean from Europe to the Middle East and North Africa, and the Patriarch of Constantinople was regarded as a rival to the Pope. Squabbles over which man was the most important culminated in the Schism of 1054, which permanently divided the Eastern and Western churches. However, as the empire grew to become Europe's dominant power, a few of the seeds of its demise were already being sown. The development was not without its challenges. For one head, Justinian piled up enormous unpaid liabilities that his kin needed to settle through cumbersome expenses. Additionally, it was becoming more and more challenging for the Byzantine army to defend all of the empire's newly acquired territories from other zealous civilizations. And that was all before the rise of the new religion known as Islam. During the 7th century AD, the Islamic army swept through the Middle East and North Africa, significantly reducing Byzantine territory. It didn't end there either. In the 11th century, Emperor Alexius was left to appeal to Western Europe for assistance, while also defending his diminished empire against an Islamic Turk invasion. The Crusades and centuries of conflict between Islam and Christianity began with this move. The Byzantine Empire would then weaken over the next few decades, eventually losing Constantinople to the Ottoman Turks in 1453. How did a realm that was once so solid become so weak? Well, it's not all to do with those intrusions. Presently, researchers accept that a few genuine dangers, ones we actually face today, could be to be faulted. There's generally a compulsion to gauge life today against the developments of the past, and this could be something to be thankful for in specific regards. Even if it means sifting through the remains of a garbage dump, knowing how great empires fell enables us to avoid making the same mistakes again. Yes, that is correct. By digging through garbage in the Byzantine settlement of Alusa, Lucis stood in what is now Israel, and had a coordinated garbage disposal system in the 6th century, as researchers have discovered. However, it appeared as though this waste removal process had stopped. And the reason for this may reveal a lot about the Eastern Roman Empire as a whole as well as Alusa. Because Elissa was the capital of a province called Palestina, which is absurd, it also produced a fair amount of garbage. This is true even before modern archaeologists have estimated that Elissa and its residents produced an impressive 212,000 cubic feet of trash each year. If you look at the numerous farms that were scattered throughout the area as well as the nearby settlements, you can see that this is the case. Why look at the dumps when you could be looking at something more appealing? Buildings can be destroyed by intruders or natural disasters, making it difficult to trace a city's architectural history. Landfill destinations, on the other hand, simply stack up increasingly more rubbish with new waste stacked on the old and burrowing down through the sheets of trash bin, hence give archaeologists imperative knowledge into Elissa and how its kin live, for junk stores were investigated and complete with each loaded with energizing waste. On Earth, for instance, there was pottery, coinage, and pieces of glassware. Seeds appeared to include the charred remains of grapes that had been grown nearby. Wine made from this fruit could have been exported to countries as far away as France and Britain. Referring to transport, some of the foods found in the trash heaps appeared to have been brought in from the Nile and Red Sea. This indicates that they were probably pricey and in high demand among locals. In total, the garbage's radiocarbon dating suggests that it was produced relatively early in Elissa's history. As we mentioned earlier, the system for getting rid of trash seems to have stopped around the 6th century AD. This suggests that the infrastructure as a whole was falling apart. However, this would appear to contradict the fact that we are discussing a time when the Byzantine Empire was at its most powerful, at the point when life in the district was generally consistent and struggle-free. Before the Muslim conquest, there were still 100 years. So the issue was with what? Actually, experts believe that there were two terrible issues at the same time: the plague of Justinian, a disease that was killing millions of people across the empire, and the plague. The late Antique Little Ice Age was a series of significant climate shifts that also occurred in the Northern Hemisphere. The late Antique Little Ice Age began in 536 AD, and its beginnings were dramatic, and it may have contributed to the Byzantine Empire's ultimate demise. The eruptions of 3 volcanoes were so violent that their ash prevented sunlight from reaching Earth. And despite the fact that one of the eruptions took place further out into the Arctic, possibly in Iceland or Alaska, its effects persisted throughout the Byzantine Empire for 150 years. The weather conditions was quite cooler across the northern side of the equator, truth be told. Therefore, the natural world may also have been to blame for the Byzantine Empire's demise, despite the fact that historians have primarily focused on the geography and politics of the empire as factors that contributed to its fall. Climate change, on the other hand, has existed in various forms on a smaller scale, despite the fact that we frequently associate it with the innovations of the Industrial Revolution. Some civilizations may have used the weather to their advantage throughout history, including the Roman Empire. For instance, crops thrived in the warm but not scorching climate of Europe. This in turn led to a boom in the region's economy, and the wealth that resulted was extremely useful for constructing and retaining territories. However, ancient civilization studies and discussions of climate change are uncommon. Furthermore, that is halfway in light of the fact that its effect is so difficult to gauge. Remodels in old urban communities were normal, and archaeologists don't necessarily know whether these transformations were a reaction to shifts in environment or something different. All things considered, then at that point, that makes the Elissan trash stacks a shockingly priceless wellspring of data. Additionally, the impact of the bubonic plague pandemic should not be overlooked. Infectious diseases were already a major cause of death for us in the late Little Ice Age. Microbes were able to easily spread through bustling cities, thanks to a population that rarely lived beyond their 20s and a tightly knit empire. Tuberculosis and leprosy were among the diseases that thrived in Rome's crowded cities and long highways, as were gastrointestinal illnesses like paratyphoid and shigellosis. Additionally, when food and water were contaminated, the climate began to shift, and it appeared that the situation got even worse. In the first place, there was the Antonine Plague, which may have been the first time a population had been wiped out by smallpox. Once the plague struck, Byzantine society began to lose some of its power. Other deadly pandemics followed to the starting points of the plague of Cyprian are as yet a secret, yet it tore through the domain in the 300 years. Then at that point came the bubonic plague, which would be a trailblazer of Europe's dark passing, while Justinian was developing his area, trusting that it would expand and more impressive than any other time in recent memory. A minuscule bacterium known as Yersinia pestis was causing death in roughly half of his subjects. The pestis, which is known to be prevalent in rodent colonies, first appeared around 4,000 years ago and probably entered the empire along one of its major trading routes. The bacterium can be carried by marmots and dribbles, despite the fact that it is most commonly associated with the black rats that frequently infest human dwellings and spread disease in the same way fleas on rats spread disease. It is astonishing how a single bacterium could have traveled from China to the Mediterranean. Even though we now know more about the germ theory, we can still learn from this collision of man and nature. How did everything culminate in the Byzantine Empire's fall? It's not surprising that the region's power began to wane as more people died and the economy suffered. Yes, even before the devastating Islamic invasion, it appears that the Byzantines were losing control. Disease and climate change were threats that no power could overcome. However, be advised that there is still no one-size-fits-all solution to the Byzantine Empire's decline. The findings of the loose archaeologists, according to a professor at the University of Jerusalem, who was not actually involved in the garbage heap study, merely provide evidence of the limit to resilience that civilizations experience. In other words, Fallujah may have been weakened by climate change to the point where it could not defend itself against other threats. This indicated that the Muslim armies had not invaded a powerful city with a robust infrastructure. However, the city's fate and the empire's already dying outposts serve as stark reminders that even the most powerful civilizations are not infallible. The way this theory demonstrates the complexity of the ancient world is fascinating. Although Calusa traded with those North European nations, it was much further south in the region that was experiencing truly icy winters during the late Little Ice Age. It just goes to show how the Byzantine Empire connected different parts of the world like Rome did. Now scientists want to show how the struggles of the Byzantines may have taught us something. One of today's most debated and contentious topics is climate change. Additionally, countries are increasingly interconnected, so something that affects a far-off corner of the world could ultimately resound here similarly as in Alusa. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a thing.